All right, let's do a little bit of organizational stuff here. Everyone, Coach Patrick from Manure Station here. Thank you for joining me. Would love to make sure you guys can see me and you're all good. So if you could go ahead and just give me a little message in the sidebar there. Let me know. I would super appreciate it. That'll be fantastic. Thank you. I'm going to mute all devices and make sure I'm super good with regards to that, because we don't want any issues from the texting. Hey Scott, how's it going? I'll make sure you guys got me all right. Hold on. So let me go ahead and just make sure I can see the chat and all the stuff. Hold on. Jonathan lets me know good to go. All right, awesome. Good stuff. I'm going to give people a few more minutes to filter in. This will be recorded, so people do know moving forward if you have to leave for whatever reason. I'm going to send this out to everyone who has been registered, so you'll definitely get it back. So don't worry about that. Josh, no worries. I hear you, brother. If you do have to leave, please do me a favor and put the comments in the chat box, which everyone's using. And I will find it and I will go through the end. I'll stay at the end, answer questions through the chat. This will not be a live sort of voice-to-voice conversation, but I will answer all the questions in the chat and I'll make sure to go through all of them. Some of them I may see and I'll be able to integrate them into the webinar. Some of them I may not see. Sorry, that's just the way that it is. I am getting old. I'm aging. I may miss it. In which case I'll catch it all at the end and we'll all be set from that regard. Okay? Awesome. Okay, so making sure I'm all good here. Or at least I feel like I'm all good with everything that I'm trying to do. Okay. Goodness me, all the pieces. All right. Just to give you sort of a brief overview of the ground rules here tonight before I get started. This is sort of part and parcel of what we talk about in terms of race execution. And when we do that inside Endurance Nation, it's a core part of our methodology. So preparing you to do the race is part of it from a physical perspective. Another huge element of it is the mental side, which is sort of being prepared to do the work of racing. But that third part is really all about execution. And execution or executing a race is actually a skill. It's something that we work on. So it's something that people think they're good at. Like, hey, when I race, I do well. I think I'm good at it. Being good at something is awesome. That's great, right? Better than not being good at it. But it's still different than developing a skill. So some people can pick up a golf club and hit a golf ball and they're like, I'm fairly good at golf. But golf is actually a skill, right? It's a skill-based sport and you actually need to practice it a lot to get really good at it. And race execution is a similar process. And we do that through layering into our training plans, having spaces where athletes can connect with me and with their peers or come to a training camp like a run or race camps and sort of refine the learning process to get closer and closer to executing what is their best possible race. So as I go through the talk tonight, I'm going to be moving from the macro to the micro, from sort of general principles to the more specific ones. And there's a reason for that. First and foremost, the macro rules are really great to have in your back pocket. They're easy to remember, and they're great to use when you're like, God, like here I am in this situation right now. What do I do, right? You can pull out one of those macro rules and use them. If you're one of the people who's a little bit more type A, or perhaps you have experience in Chattanooga, or lots of experience racing Ironman distances, the micro details may become more useful to you than anyone else. But regardless, we always start with the macro, sort of the baseline fundamentals of how we operate on race day, and that we recommend you do the same thing as well, okay? Just as background knowledge for you, and just a full disclaimer, I have not raced Ironman Chattanooga, although I have this year gone out and biked the course twice, 2 loops on 2 days. So 4 times around that bad boy. And I've also run the course as well on the 3rd day at the end of our training camp. So I have some familiarity of the course, not exactly the run course because obviously some roads were not closed, but a pretty darn good approximation. So I'll be bringing in my own experience into this talk, and I'll be using slides as well as doing some trickery with some maps. Not trickery, but zooming in and zooming out. Sometimes that's disorienting for people, what have you. But you can always come back and take a look at them. Okay, so with that said, let me share out my screen, and I'll be toggling back and forth between the screen that is the slides and the screen that is the maps. And so again, I appreciate your patience as I do that. There may be a bit of a lag from a video perspective as we do it. Can I get a thumbs up that you guys can see the slides here with the Endurance Nation logo, which I totally need to update because obviously that is the old logo. That's just no good. Not sure what I'm thinking. All the thumbs. Thanks, brother. Thanks, Scott. Okay, so we will then dive in, as it were. Okay, 4 keys of race execution. I'm not going to go through all this stuff here, but generally speaking, the idea here tonight is to sort of orient you to how we do things just at the same time as we are preparing you to be your best in Chattanooga, all right? You can always come back to this slide later, sort of how we work. The big differential for Endurance Nation is very similar to this. I spend a majority of my time educating people and also learning from our team. Training plans are fairly straightforward. You are 100% in charge of your training inside the team. I give you guidance. You have questions, you raise your hand, I answer them, but I do not follow you. I do not stalk you. You are big boys and girls, and you can do your workouts. And we focus instead on iterating better, not reinventing the wheel every year. How do we get better each and every year as a team, and which obviously also benefits you individually. That's a great group of people. It's a lot of fun. Woo, there you go. All right. Background on me, full-time coaching since 2004. So like you are a doctor, a lawyer, a Lyft driver, whatever you may do. I am a coach, so I do this all day long. I am super fortunate, but I'm also super geeky about those things. So pluses and minuses, right? Done a lot of these races, and similarly busy like the rest of you with all sorts of things going on in my life, but I think that's part of who we are. Ironman is just one of many problems that we have. It's not just the only problem that we have. Okay, so starting off with the macro, very quickly, I'm gonna go through our 4 keys of race execution, all right? So number 1, race day is about execution, not fitness. I cannot say this enough. All week, you're walking around, looking at all the people around you, trying to see, not if you fit in, because this is your tribe, you do fit in, but you fit in a way that is really weird, which is we're sort of sizing each other up, that there's gonna be some kind of a fight. You're counting abs, like 4, 7, like 9, like that person has 11 abs, like where's the 12th one? What happened, right? You're looking at bikes, you're looking at wetsuits, you're looking at watches, you know, you're seeing like, there goes someone on a bike. Do they have a band? Do they not have a band? If they have a band, they're dumb. If they don't have a band, that's cool. That's okay. You can do that. You do that, right? We see people biking without helmets, and we scoff at them like mere minutes before we also get on our own bike without a helmet for some unbeknownst reason. It's a little crazy. And it's unfortunate too, because this is your tribe. And you have to acknowledge them for who they are, which is to say that they're awesome people. But on race day, it's a bit of a mob mentality, and they're not the smartest people out there. So a majority of the competition on race day is focused on how fast can they go. They've trained to do a 1 hour, 17-minute swim in the pool. They've timed it. They eliminated flip turns in the regimen. They've been sighting diligently in the pool, just like they will sight in the river. You know, all the things that they're doing. They've been simulating buoy turns. I don't know, whatever, right? They're going to get out there and gosh darn it, they're going to swim 1:17 or faster if it's the end of their race, which ironically it often is. And that passes through to the bike and the run. In fact, it really ever gets to the run because most people are so torqued from the bike and the swim that they don't even get to have the run that they want to have. So your job on the day is not to do what everyone else is doing. You want to execute. You let them test their fitness, but you are executing, okay? And if those of you who've done an Ironman before, and you can raise your hand, don't show me, just raise your hand, right? You know who you are. You know what I mean, because you've seen the second half of a run course. And I don't care if it's a flat course or a hilly run course like we have here in Chattanooga, which we'll talk more about in a minute. People will do incredible things to ruin their days, and they only have themselves to blame. Rarely do they actually, after the race, blame themselves. But really, it's a host of decisions that they make, sometimes unawares, sometimes sort of on the edge, that put them in a position from which they cannot solve the problem without slowing down, walking, stopping, whatever that may be, right? So the goal here is to get you out of the game of trying to see who's the fittest person to the top of this hill, right? Who's the fittest person at the swim start? Who's the fittest person to get across the pedestrian bridge? Those things don't matter. The fastest person across the 140.6 miles is the best person, because we measure you by your race skills. And whether that's a function of time or age replacement or completion, right? If you're competing or completing, whatever that may be for you, that's fine. There's still a level of excellence which you can achieve. And I'll talk more about that in a second. Okay, so super important. Our goal here is to pace yourself appropriately so that your personal finish line happens mere feet after the actual event finish line, right? So how do we focus on executing versus fitness? What's going to help us do that? And we've made it very simple by saying on an Ironman course, there's a line, and that line is drawn at mile 18. So you can go back and look at the run maps and be like, mile 18 goes here. Everything before mile 18 is not racing. You are executing. So every time you're faced with a choice, do I chase that person to the top of this hill, or do I continue to ride and shift through my gears? You choose the second option because you're executing, right? Because you're before mile 18 of the run. If you are after mile 18 of the run and you say, someone just passed me, do I chase them down or do I not chase them down? In that situation, we want you to actively race. I've got 8 miles left of this race. I am, an hour to an hour and a half to maybe 2 hours if you're power walking till I'm done. I'm going to get this bad boy done. I'm counting things off. I'm never going to see these things again as I go through that second loop. Now I'm racing. Now I'm engaged. But until that point in time, we are not looking at calf muscles. We are not chasing people to tops of hills. We are not overexerting ourselves beyond what we have been able to do from a physical standpoint of training, because that's unproven territory, right? So the reason why we do this is because we define success on the course as not slowing down. So it's not about you negative splitting a run or running the fastest marathon you've ever run, but you happen to be in an Ironman. Those things rarely ever happen. If they do, we all hear about them, but they're very, very rare. Instead, it's about not slowing down. So in a strange way, successful Ironman racing is slowing down less than the competition, right? In another parallel sense, it's also about being faster by being smarter or not working harder, right? So it's okay to be fast. It's okay to work in appropriate areas, but it's not okay to go hard all the time. It's not okay to go hard at the wrong times. And it's not okay to have a great bike split, for example, and then a bad run. We like to say there's no such thing as a good bike followed by a poor run. It's all about the run, and it's about not slowing down that run, or at least slowing down far less than the competition. So you start to pass people at the end, you start to get that momentum and realize that, in fact, yes, you are racing, right, as opposed to everyone else, right? Now, when you execute poorly, there are consequences, and that moving that line closer, right? So we talk a lot about could versus should. If you think you could ride a 6-hour bike split on the Chattanooga course by all of your math, then you probably should ride like a 6:10 or a 6:15. And that allows you to run well. If you go out and you ride too easily, you've got 26.2 miles to make up that time. And there's plenty of time there to do it. If you go out and ride that course too hard on the bike, it's 26 miles for that mistake to express itself. And it is absolutely without a doubt, 100% chance of that mistake expressing itself. You will not dodge bullets on a 26.2 mile run after a bike that you've overbiked yourself. Right? It's just not going to happen. And that is definitely going to affect your day, right? So we talk about could versus should. And we really want to be mindful of making sure that all the decisions before we get to mile 18 of the run are set up so that we can have a successful day, which we define as not slowing down on that run, right? Okay. Third bullet. So how do we make sure we're successful in this huge period of time before the line? If it's just the last 8 miles, Coach Patrick, that means I've got 132.6 miles to figure out what the heck am I going to do with myself? And it's not easy. It's super, super not easy. What you need to do is put yourself in a box. So this key is the box. And inside that box goes all the things that you can control. Outside of the box goes all the things you can't control. So when you are on a particular hilly stretch and other people decide to take off like it's a Strava KOM chase, you can't control what they're doing. You can't stop them, but you can control what you do. And you can say, you know what, I'm not going to chase those people because that's a bad idea right now, right? Similarly speaking, if you're swimming, and someone's going nuts next to you and like the fist drill and it's your face and you're really unhappy about your face getting pounded in, you could try and stop and talk to them and explain to them that swimming with their fists is really, really inefficient and that your face actually doesn't like to be caressed by knuckles, but prefers something more gentle, but they're not gonna listen. They're not in a mood for it. So you can focus on what you can control, which is your direction in the water. You can slow down, you can move to the side, whatever it may be to find that safe place. Another great example of this is drafting. There's a lot of people on that course. There will be periods where you may see real drafting. Now, that said, it always looks like people are drafting from your perspective, because in front of you, you see all these people in a line, and behind you see all these people in a line. So by definition, from your perspective, everyone is drafting, even though not all those people are. But that said, you have to be really mindful of what that means for your performance. You can get really outside of your own zone and say, my God, these people, everyone around me is drafting except for me. I'm the only clean racer here. And when you see someone, you're gonna wanna talk to them about how they're breaking the rules. These people did not pay all that money to come here and have a lesson from you about what the rules are. They're adults, they signed the rules, they know what they are. Some people are breaking those rules on purpose. It's not gonna benefit you in any way to spend time thinking about those people, thinking about what you're gonna say to those people, then having that conversation, maybe trying again, because you're not monitoring your heart rate, monitoring your effort, monitoring your nutrition, figuring out how you're doing and making smart decisions. All those things are out the window while you're really fixated on this person. Not helpful, right? So we don't want to be in that space, right? So that box becomes your sanctuary, your space of control, and your space of doing the things that matter, right? I think one of my favorite Nike commercials of all time was talking back in the day during one of the Summer Olympics, and they were asking this woman, amazing runner, what she thought about during the 400, 440 hurdles, I believe. What was it going through her mind as she's, executing this flawless race and gold medal, world record performance, etc. And her answer was 1, 2, 3, kick, 1, 2, 3, kick, 1, 2, 3, kick, 1, 2, 3, kick, because that's all she's doing is executing her form. And you similarly need to be doing the same thing. Is the weather what I thought it was going to be? Am I hotter than it was? How's my nutrition going down? What is my heart rate right now relative to where I am on this course? How am I doing time-wise, like relative to what I thought I was going to be doing? What changes do I need to be making based off of this information that's presented to me? Smart athletes, fast athletes are making all of those decisions as they go through this process. Hey, just a second, folks. I'm super sorry. I have no idea who is totally texting me. I'm going to totally stop all of this stuff. I thought I did it, but clearly I did not. All right, we are in do not disturb mode now. We are Chattanooga webinar mode. All right, sorry about that. Okay, so the goal here with the box, obviously, is to keep the box as big as you can for as long as you can. So the broader the perspective you have about making decisions, hey, I'm kind of hungry now. I wasn't going to eat till mile 10, but I'm going to eat at mile 8. I think when I get there, etc. That's great. Like eventually that box gets smaller and smaller as you get out on the run course and later in the run, and you can only really think about it a couple minutes ahead or maybe even just a couple seconds ahead. That's a tough place to be, but the smarter the decisions are, the bigger the box will remain, the longer time you have to make good decisions across the course of the day. The more good decisions you make, lots of frequent, smart little decisions, the better off you'll be. Because even if you're making poor decisions in the context of lots of frequent decisions, you have many opportunities to reverse that over time. Like, I'm going to try this gear over this hill. You ride that hill. You know what? No, not a good idea. I'm going to go back to my small ring for the rest of these hills. That's a great adjustment. Lesson learned, adjustment, decision made, right? Versus setting it and forgetting it, which is not what we can afford to do in an Ironman. All right, the final fourth key here on the macro level piece is your one thing. Look, Ironman racing is hard. One of the reasons why we sign up for it is because it's difficult. It's one of the few places athletically where you can technically be on the line of really racing, but also really in this endurance space where mental toughness, mental strategies really come into play. When people are done in an Ironman course, sometimes they are physically done, so don't get me wrong, nutritionally, or they made bad hydration decisions, or they've got like a cramp, or maybe they had a crash, heaven forbid, or something like that. But the majority of people who end up not having the day they want reached a point, whether it's because of some poor decisions or just because things got hard, where they said no mas. They said, I can't do this. It's just too hard. I cannot go on. That is part of racing. So just like there's the wall inside the marathon lore, like everyone hits a wall sort of in a marathon. That same thing exists in an Ironman. Its location is pretty arbitrary. We hope it's at mile 18 or perhaps later. That'd be awesome. But you will hit a point on that day where you say, I am done. For me, I kind of hit it a little bit in all three disciplines. There's a point when I'm like, I could be done swimming, and a point where I can say, I would be sure happy if I can get off this bike right now. We all hit those spots. It's what you do when you get to those points that makes a big difference. And for us, we use that one thing, which is the reason why you're here, your goal for the day, the reason why you trained. Sometimes it's in memory of someone, sometimes you're fundraising, sometimes it's a promise you've made to yourself, sometimes you just want to complete your first one, sometimes you're competing for something within your age group, or whatever that may be. But whatever that one thing is, you need to have it ready, because your body is going to come up with amazing reasons, unbelievable, unforeseen reasons as to why you should stop. Your mind needs to be ready to handle it. So don't wait for there to be a problem to figure out a solution to the problem. We plan ahead. So we think about having what some of these options are to keep us going, right? And sometimes it can be as simple as, your racing self honors your training self, right? That's a common phrase inside the team, where your training self has been doing 6, 9, sometimes 12 months of training. And on race day, your racing self's going to show up and just say, this hill's too hard. Like, come on. Like, we're going to get over this hill. I have to power walk it, fine. But I got to walk backwards because my, quads are locking up or whatever it is, fine. But we're going to keep moving. I'm not stopping, right? And that perspective makes a big difference. Because often, even when you hit a low in the day, or when things seem really, really hard in a given part of the day, it doesn't last very long. It's only 10 seconds, 20 seconds, 30 seconds. By the time you get, the whole time you've been dreading this hill, worried about this hill, now you're on the hill, oh my God, it's so hard, and you're thinking about the hill, etc. If you were just saying, this is what I'm doing with my hands, this is what I'm doing with my feet, I'm going to keep my gaze 20 feet in front of me, I'm going to run really good, I'm going to be really focused on my form, etc. Before you know it, you look up and you say, oh my God, the top of the hill is just at that mailbox. Like, I can run from here to that mailbox, and guess what? The hill's done, right? So a lot of times you can, from a mental perspective, change the outcome, change the problem that you've been thinking about this whole time by being really smart. And the one thing is part of that process, okay? So just to recap, we have, which quickly, execution. So race day is about execution, not fitness. We have the line. Line is at mile 18. Before mile 18, we are executing. After mile 18, we are racing. We get around that race course by putting ourselves in a box. Everything we can control goes inside the box. Stuff we can't control goes outside. And then finally, our one thing. So when it gets really, really hard, when our body starts throwing cramps at us or aches at us or stomach discomfort or just says it's too hard, what are we going to pull out of our toolkit? What do we have to keep us going? Okay? All right. So moving now from macro stuff to mid-macro, semi-macro, just some discipline thoughts for you about execution, swim, bike, and run. There is very little difference, particularly in Chattanooga, between a hard swim and an easy swim for our triathlete. We are adult onset swimmers, almost 99.9% of us. We all know the one person who's an amazing swimmer, and we hate them. We wish them well on race day, of course, but we hate them for their speed in the pool. Those people have different gears on the swim, right? We do not have different gears on the swim. We have a gear, and we use that gear, but that is it. We can work a lot harder at that gear. We can move our arms faster, kick a lot, but we don't actually fundamentally move any faster, right? And the result is that trying to swim faster for most of us doesn't yield a faster time. Instead, the slower we move, the smoother we swim. The smoother we swim, the faster we swim. Swimming being a skill-based sport, the faster we swim, the sooner we finish. So ironically, it's about swimming your best possible swim and not just working really, really hard for 2.4 miles or whatever the Chattanooga swim may end up being. So we like to say swim only as fast as your ability to maintain form. Want to stay inside your box, counting the strokes or focusing on what you can control, making sure that your technique is as good as possible. I've got a couple of cues myself that I use from my breathing, right? Sort of 3-count breathing if I'm in a good space, 2-count breathing if I'm working too hard or I'm getting anxious in the water. So 2-count breathing and towards the end of my swim, last 2 buoys or so is fine. But if I've got that in the middle of my swim, I need to slow things down, right? Not good for me. Some people like to focus on their finishes. Some people really like to focus on their rotation. Whatever your 2 or 3 cues are that you've been finding in your swim training have made a difference to your times in the pool, take note of those, use them on the race day to make sure that you are also doing your best possible swim. Last but not least, swim karma, could not talk about it. I swear if we had drones and we fellow swimmers, we would see one person like punch someone in the foot, and that person would try and kick really, really hard, and they would get angry and they would punch the person in front of them in the foot who would kick really, really hard, and we would just sort of watch this little trail of anger move through the water, and none of those people are swimming well. Look, you've got your head down, you're swimming in a lake, no one's happy, somebody bumps you, like, my bad, it's all good, just keep swimming. You don't need to go out of your way to get angry at people and do stuff. Again, doing that stuff takes you outside of your box. You're not swimming well, okay? Don't ever stop swimming. The number of times I see people sight, some people sight like every 2 strokes. If you have 1,000 people to the left and like 1,000 people to the right, you're good, right? If you can see somebody right in front of you or you can see a buoy down there, you're fine. You at no point in time need to see all the buoys simultaneously. You only need to see the next buoy, and your job is to get to that buoy and stay on the proper side of it. Really, that's it, right? Focus on, staying on the right side of the buoy, focus on staying smooth, etc. I don't believe that the sunlight is terrible in Chattanooga for the race. You want to have all of your swim-related gear just in case. Generally speaking, the swim is pretty fast, so it's not like you need like a skin suit because the water is too hot, or like Kona or whatever it may be. So I think you'll be fine with sort of the basics that you have. I always tell people you should have an extra pair of goggles. That's something that I always put in my T1 bag. Get your T1, T2 bags back. Should your goggles explode before the start, you have a means of getting those goggles, right? And you walk to the swim start, but you could find a way to get to them. Or usually they have goggles at the start if you find a race official and say, hey, what's going on? But hopefully you don't have to be in that water without goggles, like the whole piece, right? It's a time trial start with people jumping the water with some smart, which means you're self-seeded. In general, we tell people, seed yourself a little bit faster than you anticipate. So if you think you're a 120 swimmer, put yourself in the 115s. Don't put yourselves in with the 55s, right? But just be a little bit faster. Better to be swum over by some faster people than to be parking yourself at the way, way back and have to swim through all these people, right? Very quick, okay? Transition stuff quickly for you. This is a great place to make up a ton of time. People don't really think about it. They focus on swim split, bike split, run split. But transitions make a difference. And also, they're one of the few times that you're trying to do stuff that's a little sort of not inside your wheelhouse in terms of practice. And if you don't do it right, you can forget something important, or you can really mess things up, right? So we always tell people that transitions exist on a spectrum in terms of speed and comfort. So if you're really focused on speed, your transition bag has the fewest pieces of stuff in it as possible, so you can move as quickly through transition as possible. If you're all about comfort and you want to change your clothes and put on different clothes and sunscreen up and have a sandwich while you're there, do whatever. If that's you, that's fine. Remember, go to awards because the Mike Riley will talk about you taking like 37 minutes in T1. But whatever that is, go through the process. It's worth walking through it a couple times and literally visualizing the process, right? I enter transition here. I've got my goggles and my swim cap in my hand, and I've got my wetsuit over my arm. Goggles and cap go in this hand. So I've got everything in this hand. I'm gonna run over and I'm gonna grab my bag. I'm gonna run into the tent. I'm gonna put my bag on the chair. I'm not gonna park myself. Like, walk yourself through all those steps so you get really good at understanding what you're gonna do. Because when you're in a rush, you could get that wrong very quickly, right? Okay. One of the things you can do when you do drop off your stuff the day before, and you're only dropping off your T1 and T2 bags, is walk through the transition area. I take a lot of pictures and make sure you know how it works. See how you want to place everything inside your bag. Example we talked about before, sort of visualizing what you're going to do. If you need your helmet, for me, my helmet always kind of goes in the bottom of my bag because it's the last thing that I want. I can put my sunglasses in there or whatever I need. My shoes, if they can't go on the bike, which most of the times they can't, they go on top of that. And then somewhere in there, I've got a belt or whatever else I need. Generally speaking, I put most of the extra loose stuff I need in a bigger Ziploc bag, which we call a go bag. So I can open up my transition bag. I can take my shoes out, shoe. I can take my helmet out, which has my sunglasses and my go bag in it. Go bag goes in my mouth. Sunglasses go in my head. Helmet goes over the top of that. And then I've got my bag here, got my go bag in my mouth, my empty bag here, and my wetsuit and stuff like that. And I hand that to a volunteer and say, please fix this for me. Thank you so much. And I'm gone. And as I head out the tent, I'm taking stuff out of this Ziploc bag to put around my waist or put in pockets or whatever it is. When I'm done with that bag, I just drop it off or hand it to a volunteer, and I'm off and running. There we go. Right? Very simple, very straightforward. Once you want to find your bike, know where your bike is, know the landmarks, lamp post, tree, building, whatever it is. Say to yourself, take a picture of it so you know. That's your mantra as you're going through transition, because you have to be responsible for finding your bike in case they don't find it for you. Get your bike, slow jog to the mountain line, cross that mountain line, and then safely mountain right away. There you go. Please do not eat stuff in transition. Please do not eat stuff or try to eat stuff as you're riding your bike. You do not need to simultaneously be eating a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, hold your aero bar pads, and then with your pinky, start your watch at the same time to get it like right here. Like you could start your watch a minute later and you'd be okay. You'd be amazed at the number of people who mess this up because they just can't quite get it right. Yeah, or I see people run across the transition, the mountain line, awesome, and then they still have their shoes in their hand. Now they got to take their bike and like lean it up somewhere against a fence and take the time to put their shoes on. That's great if you are not on grass, or that's great if you're worried about like ankle stability, or maybe your shoes are really fragile. But for most of us, we can jog or walk briskly in our cycling shoes, and then you can just get on your bike and ride away, and not get to the place where people are supposed to be getting on their bikes, and then decide that there you're going to do stuff. That's like being in the boarding line for a plane, and you decide that once they scan your ticket, you're going to then open up your suitcase on the other side of that inside the corridor to like go through stuff and find what you want. Like that's something you do back there in the place where we do those things, not here, right? Super important. Okay. Onwards, bike stuff. Here we go. Bikey bike. I mentioned earlier, no such thing as good bike followed by a poor run split. So the run course will be littered with people who are like, man, I put up such great numbers, or can't believe my negative split, or like that hill was awesome. I'm pretty sure I KO in the descent. Doesn't matter, right? Simply doesn't matter. So I covered some of these things before. The last piece I'll sort of mention is that 90% rule. 90% of the people you see riding and running around you are doing the wrong thing. So do not just do the thing that you see. There's very few triathletes. Normally we are like lemmings and we do follow each other, but doing so on race day will often than not lead to disaster. So please avoid those people going through the 90%, right? So just kind of give you a sense of how things work. We'll kind of juxtapose what the 90% athlete does with what we want for an endurance nation, or like you, the 4 keys athletes. 90% athlete, they bike too hard for those first 20 miles. They continue going too hard for the rest of that whole first loop. They start to feel it at this in sort of middle part of that second loop. By the time they realize they've gone too hard, they're done. They're going through Chickamauga and they're trying to think about how they're going to make it back to transition, and they're toast. They're already coming up with creative stories about how who knows what happened to them, but that's the reason why their day is terrible, because what they did to themselves on the bike, right? Whereas the 4 keys athlete's going to say, hey, what do I need to focus on from a terrain perspective in each of these zones? How am I going to make sure that I'm making the best possible decisions based off of that terrain? What about the should, could piece, so I can make sure that I'm doing the right work so I end up at the line in a great place to run, because the line is at mile 18 of the run. And then remembering that 90% rule. The majority of people that I see around me are not doing the right thing. If I do the opposite of the majority of people around me, I'm pretty good and I'll likely be in a better place, right? So if all else fails, that's your go-to, right? So the 4 keys athlete, for those first 20 miles, they're just chilling. They're just riding along at a pace that we could all ride along at. It's still going to be fast. There's a bunch of people riding out there. You still be going along. But we're not overtly working hard in those first 20 miles. We're not putting time into the bank, because that bank does not exist, right? We've got this ninja zone, as people like to call it, which is where we're being really smart. We're being really sneaky about where we put effort, where we don't put effort, finding speed in places where it's free, ignoring the slowness at times when we simply have to respect the course, the terrain, the conditions, etc., and that we remain strong through the end of the ride. Not riding faster, but remaining really strong. So from a perspective after the race, when I go back and look at your data, I see that your heart rate is kind of built all day along the bike. And at the end there, it may flatten or drop a little bit in the last couple of miles as you back off, but it's not something that's going up and down the whole time, or it goes great for 3 hours and then plummets to the bottom. It's that building effort all day that makes a really, really big difference, okay? So bike execution specifics from a macro perspective, so you know, 2 things you need to think about here, especially related to Chattanooga as well. First and foremost, the hills. We think about riding hills, our job is to flatten hills as much as possible. And this is really, really important. Hills are a place where people feel resistance. And when people feel resistance, we just naturally push against that resistance, right? So if you're standing there and someone comes along and puts their hands on your shoulders and starts pushing against you, you naturally will lean against them to sort of equalize out that situation and maintain your equilibrium, right? And so we want to do that on hills. So we're riding along at our happy 17 or 16 or 18 miles an hour. And all of a sudden this hill comes and we start slowing down. You know, we go 15 to 14, 14 to 13, 13 to 12, 12 to 10. We don't like that, right? We don't like the fact that we're slowing down. We definitely can perceive as triathletes, we're very aware that we're slowing down. And we want to push against that. We want to push against that problem. That is not what we're supposed to be doing on hills, right? Because if you're riding your same steady effort, just if we were all in a car right now and we were driving along at 60 miles an hour and I got my foot right at the spot for 60 miles an hour, I'm like, how's everybody? You're like, it's great, turn up the jams. And we're riding along and then the hill comes and I don't move my foot. I keep my foot right there on the gas and this hill comes. We go from 60 miles an hour to 55, 55 to 50, 50 to 45. All of a sudden I got to put the blinker on, like move over to the right. I'm still doing the same amount of effort. It just makes me slower on this hill because of the effect of gravity, right? And the slope of that hill. So rather than working harder, stepping on the gas and revving my engine and racing over that hill, I'm staying steady. By definition, I'm not working any harder than I was on the flats. I'm just going slower. But I maintain that effort. I maintain that effort all the way through that hill and even up at the top of the hill. As other people, the heart rate monitors start beeping, they start slowing down, they back off. We get to the top of the hill, those people that went too hard, they're gasping for air, they stop pedaling. Me, I stay right there at that same level, which I was doing on the flats, which I'm doing now, which is fine. And we're both going 10 miles an hour over the top of this hill, let's say. But I keep my foot on the gas just there, and all of a sudden I'm going 10, 12, 16, 20 on the downhill, and that person is coasting, and they're going 10, 10 and a half, 11, 11 and a half, 13, 15. By the time we get 250 feet down the hill, I'm going 28 miles an hour at my same effort down this hill. The person next to me whose heart rate is totally spiked is doing like 18 miles an hour. And they're like, how does that guy keep pulling away from me on all the hills? He must be drafting off me. And we're not, we're just riding hills better, right? So we use our skill and our strength to flatten those hills. And rather than work any harder up them, we focus a great deal on capitalizing on those hills to get back up to speed quickly over the top and use all that speed on the downhill and into the next hill or into the flat so we can get speed for free. And that's your number one goal. If we can do that, we avoid having a great discrepancy of power. Any extra power that you waste on those hills is not going to materially impact your overall race. It may change your bike split. It is not going to change your run race. You as a triathlete do not have lots of matches to burn across a 10, 12, or 14-hour day. You just don't. And the cost of burning those matches on the bike are phenomenally high, right? From a winds perspective, there's definitely winds out there in Chattanooga. They're not terrible, historically speaking, but you'll almost always feel a headwind on the way back into town, which makes the last 8 miles or so fairly mentally challenging. And so you've got to be ready to handle that and understand that winds, similar to hills, are not things that we work any harder into. We just ride our steady effort. This is a great chance, especially at the end of the race, to look at your heart rate. If your heart rate's been going steady all day and slightly increasing, you're at say 137 or 138, I'm making that up, and the headwind comes at the end, ideally you'll see that heart rate number stay the same because you're riding that same effort, right? If you were to be pushing just by a power number or chasing a speed, you'd start to see that number creep up because you're working too hard, especially at a time of day when you're getting a little dehydrated, perhaps need a little bit of calories, or maybe you made some earlier bad decisions and this is the final bad decision. You'll start to see that heart rate number get up out of the comfort zone. And so that's an easy way for you to make sure that you're not going too much harder in the day. So when winds come up, don't worry so much about the speed, focus on maintaining that effort. Just like we don't push harder into hills, we don't ride any harder with a tailwind to try and make up for the time we lost in the hills. Do your riding, let other people do all of that accelerating, decelerating. The variability of that heart rate change, or the work change, will be a killer to them overall in the course of the day, okay? For the admin stuff on the bike, just very clear, use the downhills as an opportunity to stretch, shake your arms out, stay loose, you know, work the neck, stretch your back, pee. If you got to pee in an Ironman, we want you to pee twice, so make sure that you're good. Very quick note on aid stations, especially for your first timers, aid stations mirror themselves in and out, so you'll have something like Gatorade, water, food, water, Gatorade, or Gatorade, water, food, Gatorade, water. So you'll have 2 fluid opportunities, water, Gatorade, and then 1 food opportunity. If your plan involves getting Gatorade, water, and food at an aid station, you're probably going to have to get off your bike. That's just too much to do at a single aid station. So you want to be able to carry some fluids with you. You want to be able to carry some food with you as well, so you can hopefully just take one thing at a time at those aid stations, which are spaced, generally speaking, about 10 miles apart. Okay. When you hit an aid station, your job rolling in is to make sure that you are full of fluids and that whatever you're using for fluids is good as well. So I've got a bike bottle that I've even been putting in my Aero bottle, or maybe I've been drinking out of this bike bottle directly, whatever it is. I take that bottle and drink as much of it as I can. Glug, 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 glug. I put as much of it into between the Aero bars setup or whatever the mount is, squirt, squirt, squirt. Whatever's left, I throw it into the net that people have before you enter the aid station and get rid of my trash there. I roll up. I'm in my drops right now. I point to the volunteer that I want to get stuff from. I point to them because no one can hear you. They know now that something's going to happen. The people around you know that something's going to happen because you're pointing at this person. As you ride to that person, carefully, you are catching that bottle because you're moving and that bottle is standing still. Essentially, that bottle's moving at you at 18 or 20 miles an hour. I'm catching that bottle and I'm racking that bottle and I'm moving on. I'm not doing anything with it right there in transition because stuff's all over the floor. It gets a little nasty, a little crazy. So generally speaking, I will get that bottle, I catch it, I rack it, I keep pedaling. I usually get a bottle of water at the end of the aid station that I'll pour on myself just to stay cool, or if I've peed, maybe rinse off some of the pee, and I throw that away before I exit. So the net is, because I entered and drank, and I entered and filled up my bottle, my bike is full of fluids, I have a brand new bottle of fluids now, and I'm also cool from the water, yippee-ki-yay, there I go riding off the rest of the day, okay? If you're ever in doubt, get another bottle, okay? Like you're more likely to drink colder fluids than warmer fluids. And the number one thing that goes wrong with people is the nutrition plan that they've trained with for months and that they've loved and it's been perfect every day without fail is not working on race day. So the food and fluids on race day are effective. You can use them, you may not like them, but they do have the nutrients, the sodium, the calories, the things that you need to be successful. So if all things are going wrong with your gut, you got nothing to lose, right? Bike special needs, totally recommend you use bike special needs. You want to have stuff in there. I generally put in bike special needs, stuff that I might need should something have gone wrong. I don't really need to be stopping because of the aid stations, but in there I'll put like extra CO2 and an extra tube rubber banded together. So if I had to change a flat early, I can grab that, put it in a pocket, I can just go. I've got extra salt pills in case I drop my salt pills on that first lap. I maybe have some extra gels or something in case I drop my gels. So if I don't have a need for those admin items because I've been doing a fair good job not getting flats and eating and drinking the food that I have, great, but I will still stop at special needs because it's a designated place to stop. You can pull over, you don't have to go to your bag because you don't need it in that case, but pull over in special needs because people are expecting you to stop there versus just stopping in the middle of the road somewhere. And use that as an opportunity to stretch, right? Twist sideways, I like to touch my toes, reach up to the sky, just open everything up for a second and be like, okay, here we go. One more time around the show and I'm done. Stopping and stretching for even 30 seconds or 40 seconds or maybe even a minute makes a huge difference in terms of how you feel across the course of the day. So don't miss out on that opportunity, right? Okay, run stuff on the macro level for you guys. This first bullet is my favorite bullet. Everyone has a long run they love. I had a great run today. I'm like loving those numbers. That's awesome. We're gonna hold on to those numbers and bring them with us and hope that we open up, surprise, on race day and there's this miracle run, which never happens. I can tell you right now, it never happens. Race day doesn't care about what you've done in training. It only cares about what you can do now. What you can do now on the run is really predicated on what you've been doing on the bike. And so a good run is all set up by a smart bike, right? Where you're riding that should split, not the could split, and you're hydrating yourself and fueling and stretching and doing all the good things you need to do, right? So finding places to be fast without working too hard to get that fast, right? Early on, if you feel good, you need to eat. Feeling good doesn't mean run sub 7-minute miles because I'm awesome. No, if you feel good, eat, because you will not be able to eat after that first hour. Even if you could eat after that first hour, you're really not going to digest it and you're probably going to hate it. Or you may throw it back up again, who knows? So use the early miles, especially if you feel good, to eat. I generally make sure I get the first half of my nutrition, the first 13 miles of my nutrition done in that first hour. So that's usually like 30 to 45 minutes ahead of schedule because I'm eating every other aid station because I can process it and handle it right now. My heart rate's low, I feel good, the cost of running hasn't really hit me yet, whereas hour 2, hour 3, beyond, all I can really do is take in fluids at that point, right? We want to carry the effort that we finished on the bike into the run. This is super important. Cycling, non-weight bearing activity, generally lower heart rates than we see on running by 10 to 15 beats. It'd be very easy to get off in your zone 2 on the bike and go to zone 2 on the run and see a 15 heartbeat difference. That's not a great place to be for a long, long day. We want as minimal variability as possible. So the easiest way to do that is to lock in that heart rate. So if you were at 135 on the bike, we want you to exit on the run at 135 and stay there for a couple miles till you get settled in. Excuse me, especially on those hot days. If it's a sunny or hotter day, you can really accumulate a lot of heat. If it's not a sunny or hot day, then what we're doing here is normalizing the difference that our body can eat those precious calories before we pick up the pace a little bit, get to the steady part we want, start to see that heart rate climb up a little bit, right? Remember the definition of success, not slowing down, very simple. I've said it enough, you better know it by now. And the run zones, essentially, which I'll dive into more, are listed below as well in terms of your pacing, right? JRA, waiting for it, and then using your one thing, okay? All right, so what do we think about? The first 6 miles, we think about being really easy pace, 30 seconds per mile on top of what your long run pace is, right? Heart rate, again, we have freeze heart rate is sort of a target for you. Mile 6 to 18, this is where we're steady pacing. We're trying to fuel when we can, being really smart. We're still running within ourselves. It's hard, but it's not super challenging, but it's getting a little bit harder by every mile, right? And then finally, mile 18, the line to the end. This is where things get really challenging. Chattanooga, the second loop of the hills. And your job is to keep moving no matter what. You're setting goals for yourself and objectives to, like, go to that lamppost. When you get a lamppost, like, you know, I think go to that tree. You get to the tree and you're like, oh my God, I'm going downhill. Why do I need to stop in the first place? There you go, right? Some admin notes for you on the run, because I would be remiss if I didn't mention them. Some people like to say they want to run the whole Ironman marathon. I've never run a whole Ironman marathon, and I've run as fast as a 3:15. Which is not the fastest of the fast out there, but fast for me, because you need to fuel at aid stations. You need to have your heart rate come down. You need to slow down to be able to think. And those periods of thinking and those small micro breaks make a big difference over time. So you slow down, you can go to the place in the aid station that has what you need. Do you need Coke? Do you need Gatorade? Do you need a gel? What is it you need to, before you get there? Run to that person, get that thing, walk your 30 steps or your 30 seconds, and then get back to it. So in other words, we start using the walking as a reward at the aid station for running between the aid stations. So that's just what we do. We run between aid stations, we walk at aid stations. That keeps us happy, right? Run special needs. This really varies a great deal on your comfort of running, and some people love it, some people not so much. And your time out there on the course. If you're gonna be out there for a while, you're gonna want like a technical long sleeve shirt. You want to go on like a headlamp or something with some particular stronger light for yourself than just reflective gear. There may be some extra special food you put in there. A lot of people put notes in there. You can't really read a note from your loved one on a bike. Not a good idea. But you can read it on the run, right? Something motivational perhaps or something like that. You got a lot of options there. Generally speaking, you can't count on getting those special needs bags back. Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't, or sometimes the bags are back, but the stuff that was in them, not there. So don't put like your only copy of your wedding picture in there. Or like a ring that you want to give someone at the finish, like, here, take this with you, I'll meet you at the finish. Like, not a good idea, right? We don't know what's going to happen with that bag. But again, it's good to have something there, even if it's just a psychological piece to look forward to something for many of us on the run. Okay. Yeah, dark place. I don't like that slide. We'll sort of get over that spot. Basically speaking, to change the words on this slide, the run gets hard, and if you're doing it right, the run gets progressively hard. It starts off feeling like it's an easy run with your friends, and after 5 or 6 miles, it feels like you're kind of running a marathon. And that, mile 10, it feels like you're kind of running a half marathon. And by mile 13, 15, it feels like you're kind of running a 10K, even though you're getting slower and slower. By mile 18, 20, it feels like you're running a 5K, like your legs are really on fire and it's really hard and difficult. And then you got 6 more miles to go. Eventually it gets down to how much longer can I sustain this effort? But we all go through that gradual progression. So your whole time you're racing, you're asking yourself, right now, this pace I'm doing, is it something that I can sustain from here at mile 1, 6, 9, 12? Is this a pace I can sustain from here to the end? If it is, go forth. If it is not a pace, if this is only a pace you can sustain until that next mile marker, or you got a break because, oh my God, this pace is just so hot, I can't handle it. That is not the pace you want to be running right now, right? So looking for that increasing perceived exertion as a sign that we are running steadily and continuing to challenge ourselves. If you have variability in that pacing, like I'm gonna run really hard, then I'm gonna walk, and run really hard and walk, that's gonna really be costly over the course of the day, okay? All right, Chattanooga swim. Now for the specifics. We're gonna start doing some map stuff and hanging out, right? Okay, awesome. So really definitely check out the Athlete's Guide for everything, especially in Chattanooga. Things can go wrong or haywire or get changed, so it's really important to be mindful of that. Generally speaking, even though the transition is down here and you spend a fair amount of time down here in the downtown area, where your transition stuff is for the T1 and T2, your swim start is up here. And so you can take a shuttle bus out. So, you want to be early and be ready and get body marked and get your transition all set up and turn on your stuff. You put in don't go to sleep mode and whatever it is, right? And then you take the shuttle up to the start of the swim so you can swim down. Obviously on race day, you can't control. They may shorten the swim, whatever it is. It just is what it is. If they shorten the swim, they shorten it for everyone. You can't go back and advocate just for you to do longer. It just is what it is, so focus on it. My only caveat on that is if they, for some reason, remove the swim entirely and you're just biking and running, that is not an opportunity for you to go out and bike like a madman or a mad woman, because now you can bike so much harder. We don't really bike that differently with a swim or without a swim. Perception-wise, it feels a lot easier. But from a muscular standpoint, the cost of the swim is so low that you're just tired when you get out of swimming and start biking, but it's not really working any harder. So we don't want to ride any harder than we would normally ride if you were just doing a bike run race. In fact, you may need to give yourself a little bit more time to kind of warm up because you didn't have that swim. Okay. All right. The bike stuff. And I'm going to toggle back and forth here in a second. So very important to note the course. The course basically runs north to south. You do the sort of straight shot all the way down. We flip it at the end, and we come all the way back in here. We take the left through Chickamauga. We do the climb, the descent, and then we repeat this loop again one more time, and then we head back into town. So it's a stick, 2 trips through the loop, and then back to the stick again. Sort of from an important perspective, it's like a 50-mile loop-ish, or about 50 miles on the loop. So it's less than halfway, but it's still longer than what you think a halfway point would be for the loop. And so for me, one of the takeaways from riding the course was this seemed mentally at times a lot longer than I thought the loop would be. And that definitely stuck with me, especially coming and talk to you guys about this, right? So remember, we talked about the should split versus the could split. I'm gonna be really smart to know, how am I gonna ride this terrain? What's it gonna look like over time so I can be successful and really kind of break it down? We're gonna have that super easy zone. We're gonna have that really smart zone. We're making great decisions on finding speed, not working too hard when the course is stacked against us. We're gonna find that space where we can be really strong at the end of the day, okay? So with that said, I'm gonna toggle over and take a look at the map stuff right now. Okay, Sarah is asking if someone knows what mile special needs is on the bike. I don't have that right now, but I'm gonna leave this little webinar chat up if someone does know. Of those of you who've done the race before, it'd be helpful to know where special needs is on the bike. You bring the special needs bags, I will tell you this, but hopefully someone is searching and finding it for you, that special needs is something you bring on race morning. So those of you in the first timer zone, when you're thinking about going out there, Anna, thank you so much, tells us it's mile 52, that in the morning you're gonna have your special needs bags. You wanna have those all done. And so I usually put all my special needs stuff in a backpack with whatever nutrition I'm bringing down. I put on my bike in the morning with my bike computer. I've got lists of all the stuff that I need with my wetsuit, and I put it in a backpack. So I get down there and I get to the space where we drop off those special needs bags. I can zip open my backpack and hand out the stuff that I need. The backpack goes to me in a transition so I can do the stuff that I need. And when I'm all said and done, I can roll that backpack up and stick it inside the dry clothes bag along with whatever clothes I was wearing, and then turn that in as well so it's available to me at the finish line. Okay. Awesome. Thank you so much for your help on. I really appreciate that. Right. So with that said, I'm going to switch over the share to a map. No, I'm going to say share. There we go. So right now you guys should see little map zone here that says run. So that's no good. We want to go to the ride. Can I get a thumbs from you people that you can see this map as I see it? That would be super helpful. So I make sure you guys can see it. Thumbs. Thank you, Josh. So fast with the thumbs. Joyce, thank you so much. Awesome. Scott with his bandage thumbs from the bike. Thank you, Jeremiah. Okay, so things that I think about with this course, I'm gonna geek out a little bit on this course, so bear with me now as I do this, okay? So some things to think about, and I can't make it, I'm not gonna go full screen on this bad boy. I don't know if I can manipulate some of this stuff here. Here we go. I'm gonna make the screen a little bit bigger here so we can see. Hold on. Sorry. Just want to see what my options are here. Okay, so a couple things to think about with this course. Sorry, I've got my webinar window over here, which is obscuring some of my view so I can see it, all right? So a couple things to think about. When we start this course here at the top, there's a fair amount of admin time here to get out of town, and it's really admin time. The roads are narrow, they're tight. This point in time, your job is to get your heart rate down out of T1, to be safe, not ride into like a sewer grate or a manhole cover, and just be smart. You'll be fast by definition, but your job here is to settle into the bike and settle into the work you're going to be doing, all right? I really encourage people to be heads up here. This is the time when someone's like looking down at their foot or like trying to repair a power meter with a pair of pedals, and that's when they just ride right into something or do something silly. There's no aid stations right in here just yet. You're just trying to get out of town and do so safely. The roads will be closed, but just to be safe, you want to be really smart in this section. You're not going to see it again until the end, but just so you do know, this last couple of miles here into when you kind of hit when you kind of get out here onto the highway and come down to the split, this is generally speaking a little bit of a downhill. It's hard to see, but you carry this momentum off of this hill. You kind of get a couple rollers, but it's net downhill through here. So when you're coming back at the end of the day, which is all the way over here, this feels like a pretty darn significant uphill, and is definitely pretty demoralizing for people. So just be aware that section is just going to be hard for everyone. You got to keep your head down. Hopefully you can fight off that headwind. And again, just start, being forward thinking about checking your heart rate so you can carry that into the run. Take an assessment of your body. Did I pee twice or did I not pee twice? Am I hydrated or not? Did I eat stuff? Like, look at my bottles. Like, one of my biggest pet peeves in Ironman is people pick up their bike at the end of the day and they're like, oh my God, I didn't eat or drink anything. Like, you should know that on the bike. You should know that before you start running so you can start making some different decisions. You make adjustments, right? All those micro decisions. All right. So as we get out here and do the course, and again, I apologize for zooming in and zooming out. Generally speaking, this section of the course is really fair. It is a steady climb up, and there are definitely a couple rollers where you're gonna have to use your small chain ring. And if anything, I always tell people, when in doubt, use the small chain ring. You're gonna hit this section of the course again a second time because it's part of the loop. If after the first time through, you're like, you know what, I probably could have carried my momentum over that hill, then do that. And you do that on that second loop. But in the first loop, you want to avoid that over exuberance or really getting out of our space and working too hard on those hills. Because if you look at the rest of this course across the bottom of the screen here, there's plenty of places where there's other hills to come, and you can do the whole, we don't want to, blow it all out of the water here in that first section. So a couple of tricky sections in here, and your whole point of this section of the course is following that guidance that we had about the hills. Carry your momentum into the hill, keep the pressure on the bottom of your feet or your power meter, whatever it is, your heart rate, the same as you climb that hill. Shift, shift, shift around those numbers. When you get to the top and you start picking up some speed, shift, shift, shift faster, get right back to speed again and go, and really try and minimize that bump on a heart rate or that spike of power that doesn't really get us anything. The difference of climbing a hill at mile 37 in 2 minutes and 37 seconds versus 2 minutes and 17 seconds is 20 seconds. You could say 20 seconds in the bank, but just tie your shoes faster in T2 and you made up those 20 seconds and there was no heart rate involved. Or jog through an aid station and for 10 seconds, or walk for 10 seconds, then 30 seconds. There's your 20 seconds. Free time to be had there, not time to make it happen on the bike with your quads. Just not a great idea, okay? So later on in the course here, what basically happens is that you'll split off from the main road. This is where you kind of head out. You'll see that the main road kind of turns and takes over, and you continue straight out here. Actually, on race day, you kind of just do a little jog to the right and get out there. And that is Cove Road, where you head out to Cove Road. When you hit Cove Road, which is just after mile 22, I will tell you this now, the quality of the road significantly deteriorates. Really on this whole sort of down section, like the down and the over section. Coming back, it's not bad, but the down and over section is tough through Hagjawa. And by that, I mean, there were entire sections of the road where I was like on the double yellow line, looking around me, making sure there were no cars because there were bumps and cracks and just really crappy road sections. So really be mindful of that when you're riding. People may move erratically through that section from mile 22 all the way through, I will tell you, about mile 33-ish or so. So for those 11 miles, people are going to be going all over the road because it's just generally kind of wacky and not so safe. So be riding heads up here. This is not a safe place to put your head down and just ride. Be really, really smart through here. At this point in time, you're past the JRA time riding. You're doing more work. There's some flat sections that are faster, but as you build to the end of this loop here, it's actually really hard. And in fact, this is on my top 3 hills. This is number 3, which is the hill down here at Hogjow Road, okay? What happens is you basically, this is the only hill on this whole section on the outbound that you hit on a false flat, right? So here we're just gonna zoom in on, you can see it here we go. This is the only hill that you hit without really any speed. You can see you're kind of going uphill the whole time, step, 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 where you don't have speed. Like, oh, it's top of the hill, right? Yeah, but you only go downhill for a second. They're building a new farmhouse or something out here. And then you got this long climb up here. That is only, what, 32 to 30, it's only, you know, half a mile or something like that. But it's the longest sustained climb you've had to date. And it's at 5, 6, 7% at times. That's a pretty decent climb and it's really challenging. So you really have to be careful here. Again, easy to get out of the saddle, easy to stand, but it looks like it's only gonna last you a minute, but it turns into a much longer hill. Again, be really smart here at the end. So when you're looking at the dial and it says mile 30, things have opened up. You see farmhouses around you, a lot more open land. You know that that hill is coming. Be really, really smart because the second time around it's gonna get you, right? Now, when you do make this left here at mile 32.5 or 32.7, whatever that is, this whole section here on the other side is actually really fast. This is a super fun section through here. So let me highlight that again so I can see it here. Hold on. Selection. Sorry, bear with me. I'm going to highlight it again so we can see it. I want to get it right. This whole section through here is pretty, generally speaking, pretty fast and pretty fun. I kind of went like a little too far maybe. Just when you turn right there, that's where the fun decidedly starts to end, kind of right in there. All right, so from here, you've got about 6 miles of fun, but again, the road quality, not so great. In fact, people have literally gone in there and written like, there's a hole, and they've drawn arrows to it. I don't even know if Google will show us that on some of these hills. I don't even know if Google went here. Look at this, man. Google didn't even go to these places. You guys are going to uncharted territory. Well, I'll tell you from experience, they literally have drawn a hole. And again, some of these sections, the whole side of the road is not safe. Or there's big marks. So again, heads up riding through here, you can be fast, but it does sneak up on you. I want to say that most of the bad sections are right at the top of a hill or heading into a hill, but then as you go a little further down the road, they seem to be on the other side of the hill, just when you're like, I'm safe. And then you're like, ah, where's my Garmin? Where's my bottle? Okay. So when you come out this other side, so we talked about it. So from Cove Road, from mile 23 all the way to 35, 36, it's been bumpy. You have to be really careful of the roads. It's generally speaking, it nets out the speed, the climb up and the downhill time you'll net out as if it's a flat course. But if you do it wrong, you spend a lot of energy and you're really tired, even though you're coasting on the other side. We don't do that, right? No coasting, ride smart. The difference is that when you come out this side of the course, at the end of the fun section, hit a stop sign, but you don't have to stop. But you make a right and a left. And when you do that, you are continuing to head sort of on this downward trend, but the hills start to count more against you. And it's very deceiving on the course. On the map, it looks like we're still going downhill, like life is good, right? But truth be told, if I can zoom in on this section, I'll take you up to like say here, in this whole section. It's not as downhill as you think it is. And the hills here end up adding up. So we have like a hill after a flat section, we get a bottom, but we have 3 hills in a row right here. Like a slight downhill, but a hill, a slight downhill. Like every time you think you're just getting free and gravity's on your side, it just kind of comes back and gets you. Specifically speaking, after that right left-hand turn, there's a really steep kicker section up at an intersection that you want to be in the small chain ring. There's a couple sneaky ones in here as well. So this whole back section of the course is fast, but without a doubt, from that turn at Hog Jowl and that first descent section, when you turn from here at mile 36 or whatever that is, right after that, right after this jog, let's call that mile 38.5. From 38.5, almost until you make it back into Chickamauga, which is like 14 miles, almost every hill has something special waiting for you on the other side. And I'm not talking about a Christmas present. I'm telling you that it's a false flat. It does not roll right into a descent. So when you are presented with a downhill where you can pick up speed, do it. Get the speed because you're going to roll right into the next hill. Take some of the climbing out. but understand that there's a couple of key hills. So the first one is right there at mile 38.4, which just sneaks up. It doesn't make my number top 3 list, but it's there and it's a pain, right? So number 3 hill is the climb into Hogjaw Road, right? The number 2 hill for me is this one here at mile 50.3. Let's zoom in on that bad boy here. Whoops. Take you to Walmart apparently. Yeah, I'm going to Walmart today. Hold on, sorry. Mile 50.3, so you've been going flat for a while and you hit this hill, so no speed here. This is a tough one, and you hit the top and you say, I must be going downhill into Chickamauga. I've totally got it. You hit like a small, in like Boston they'd call it a hamlet, like a small little village in here. This is awesome, and I'm going downhill like wee, and then all of a sudden you get crushed with this hill, which is legit a much steeper hill than you would imagine right there before you really end up going back into Chickamauga itself proper, but you are going downhill again. And so those 2 hills, so this is number 2 hill here at mile 50, and then the number 1 hill for me, that's the real tough one, is from 51 to 51 and a half, that really just kind of crushes you. And on the second lap, you will be there and you will say, I remember that dude at night telling me about that hill, and this is that hill, and I hate this hill, right? That is, there's like a storage facility here and everything. Like you're like, you think I'm done? Civilization? No, not done. Once you do get through that 3rd hill there, the tricky part there, mile 51 and a half, you get a downhill section. Of course, you'll have to stop for special needs, like how convenient. But then you roll through the downtown area, and that's very friendly. That's all good. And when you get to, hold on, I have to zoom in on this again. Basically roll through town, super neat. It seems like a super cute town, right? You're gonna take a left here at 53, 54. As you take that left at 53, 54, you're gonna start climbing. And I'll tell you this, the first couple of miles of that hill, not so bad, 6%, 8%. We'll kind of zoom in on it. It looks terrible on the map, okay, just so you know. Zoom in on that. But these first couple sections, 0.5%, right? 1%, 1.5%. This is nothing. This is all good. And in many ways, this is pretty imperceptible. Just the length of it makes it stand up. There's a bump, and then you get a bit of a respite. What really gets people is this last like 1.25 mile here at the very, very end. So the road really starts to go up. You're sort of in a little neighborhood, trees on your left, houses on the right. You're just trying to pedal through that section and get to the top. When you do get to the top, and it's just being smart, using your gears, sitting up, breathing deeply, all that stuff. When you get to the top, you've got this great descent for all that work, which is like, say, maybe 8 minutes of work, 6 minutes of work. You get like a nice 3-minute descent, super safe, super fast, right back down to the start again. 1 or 2 bumpy sections as you're climbing out of there. But generally speaking, from a terrain perspective, you know, the parts that we're really worried about are from this section here all the way back around to this section here. So really 70 to 85 and alternately like 23 to 38 are the ones that we're really worried about. Otherwise, you're pretty good with the whole terrain. So just to recap here very quickly about the bike, you have to be ready to use that small chainring, and you have to be willing to shift all the way through it. Your speed on this course is defined by your ability to pick up momentum on the downhills and carry it in the flats. Successful bike riding in an Ironman is all about momentum, right? So you think about, I don't know how old you guys are. I'm super, super old. But back in my day, before playgrounds were highly regulated and made full of plastic bottles that we recycled, one of my favorite playground toys or structures, and it was my favorite because I both loved it and simultaneously completely feared it, right, was that thing that just spun kids around in a circle, right? So you load all your friends on it, you want to get it started. Getting it started took a lot. Like push, push, right? Everybody push. And then you get it going, and over time, all of a sudden, you're running next to that thing full speed, and you just want to give it one last shove and get out of the way, and it's really speeding. And then you can just stand there on the side and just kind of hit it with your hand and keep like 20 kids as pyramid of children spinning until they, you know, fly off or throw up on themselves very quickly. Your bike leg is just like that, and not the spinning and throwing up part, hopefully. But that when your bike gets up to speed and it's going 24 miles an hour down a hill or 26 miles down a hill, you can turn your pedals very softly, 50 watts, 60 watts, super easy, like riding with your kid to school for easy, and still maintain 24 miles an hour. And it'll take you most of the way up that next hill. And if we can take a 1/4 mile hill and make it 1/8 of a mile because you rolled into that first half, that's free speed. That's exactly what we want. But when things slow down and we feel the pull of the resistance coming back into our legs and the pull of gravity, we have to start shifting to keep our momentum. And we have to divorce the competitive side of us that says, at home, this is when I shift more harder. Not easier like that guy said, and I just stand up and I just power over that hill. There's no powering over the bike hills on this course because of what's to come on the run. So you can be very fast on this course, but you have to be super diligent about it. If you do it right, you'll be tired from being in the aero position. You can use the hills not as an opportunity to express fitness or your love of hills or crushing them, but as a time to stretch your back. A downhill time is a time to coast a bit, catch your breath, do admin stuff, eat, drink, pee, whatever it may be, but be really smart, okay? Those are my highlights for that bike course. So now let's go back. I'm gonna go back to the, I'll just toggle over to the run course here on the slide so you guys can see it. So you come back into transition and you get to the run course. And if you have, thank you, Sarah, I just saw your note there, the merry-go-round. So when you come back in here for the run course, before I dive into the actual map itself, Chattanooga is just a great place to train. Like, sure, the bike course, if I was biking in Chattanooga, I wouldn't bike on the bike course itself. There's plenty of other great places to bike. But I think the run course is pretty awesome for an Ironman course. I say that now. I'm not racing it. You're racing it. You'll not be using awesome as one of the many words to describe it. But it's got a diversity of terrain, a diversity of venues. You're near a river. You're not near a river. You're in a road. You're in a neighborhood. You're by a golf course. You've got a pedestrian bridge. You know, like there's just a variety of stuff that, for me, I think from a mental perspective, it allows for a little bit more stimulation. And you're not just, you know, like Ironman Florida, like I love you, Ironman Florida, but like out and back on that course, like, dear God, like nothing. It's just like, you're just on a treadmill that never ends, right? Like, where am I? How can I tell it's any different? I don't know, right? So what stands out with this course before we do anything micro is how there's plenty of flat sections and then there's plenty of hilly sections. And so generally speaking, if you go back and look at the data, most people have their swim, they have their bike, they slow down, don't slow down, whatever, a little bit on that. And most of the runners are pretty good through mile 7. When they hit mile 7, that's where things start to go off. And for most people, mile 7 is effectively their line. Unfortunately, it has come 11 miles early, and there's no overcoming that on the day. If your line is shown up 11 miles early, you don't have a lot of options, right? You're gonna be in a tough spot. So instead, the 4 Keys athlete, all of you, will have biked really, really smart and been really intentional about how you distributed your effort and made sure you've hydrated and fueled, etc., stretched. You hit transition, you did a smooth transition, not a lot of moving pieces here at this time around. Those of you who don't know, you ride your bike across the mountain line, you can dismount. You can leave your shoes on your bike if you want, but you keep your helmet on. You give your bike to a volunteer, and then you jog to find your bag, go to the tent, do your magical stuff, and then head out on the run. Please, please, please remember that the first aid station that you will hit all day is at the exit of transition. If you leave the tent and you're looking for a table set up on a shady path somewhere with people handing out beverages, that's not gonna happen for like a mile and change. And that's 10 minutes away. That can be a long time, an eternity in Ironman time. So use the stuff you have right there in the tent, right, to be really smart. Okay, or just as you exit the tent, I should say. So we run out and we've got like a little bit of admin to kind of climb this hill and get to the path for sure. So we want to be smart, keep our heart rate down. So some people will power walk that hill, which I would recommend. No point, get your heart rate up. And then you got this nice flat section. This is where we're using the fuel. This is where we're stretching our legs, keeping our heart rate down. We're doing a lot of sort of just, you know, observing our body, how we feel, you know, remembering back about not only the heart rate that we want to hold for these miles, but also how's my stomach feeling? Is this nutrition that I have or my plan, is it working? Is it not working? What adjustments do I need to make? This is the time to make them or to think about them, because later on in the day, all you can think about is like left foot, right foot, left foot, right foot. You're not gonna be able to make some good decisions later on, right? So as you start to come back in, so essentially speaking, when you run out, sorry, this has people running out the path, but if I recall correctly, you actually run out on the freeway and then you come back in on the path. So it almost goes sort of in reverse here like this. The path is beautiful. The freeway is no shade, but you get a lot of shade on the path, even though it may be steamy. Super very pretty coming in there. And then basically you do this climb up, and that's where you're gonna hit this little steep climb here, and then you're gonna climb across the bridge. You run across like a proper road bridge first, which takes you all the way across and then starts the real climb over here on the other side. Of Barton, right? Barton Ave. Kevin Barton's on my team. That's so funny. All right. So where we do this pretty good climb over here on the other side of the bridge. Barton climb is the longest of the climbs, both on the outbound side, and then as we come back on the inbound side. So both sides of it. It's a little different on both sides. On the way outbound, it's a little steeper at first, and then it kind of levels off. So there's a prep school here, which is not maybe not going to show you. There's girls prep school. Look at that. I know what I'm talking about. All right. As you're running up here towards this entrance towards the girls prep school, it's a little steeper at first, as you can tell here, right in this little section here. We're just going to zoom in on it. Hold on a second. I got to actually click on it to zoom in on it, right? Don't I? All right. So it's a little steeper here at first, and then it's kind of gradual the rest of the way. So this first part is the worst part, just to get over that part for the bridge. So on the way outbound, the first is the worst, and then we're fine. On the return trip, it's actually pretty gradual at first, but then it does kick up significantly on that other side to a steeper grade. So it's almost the opposite. So don't expect the same thing on either side, but do use this climb as an opportunity to practice good running form, short strides, chin up, high hands, moving those hands, moving that work, keeping yourself steady, but controlling that heart rate as much as possible, especially on that first lap. If we can afford to not have that heart rate go up at all, that's great, right? Now, when we descend down the other side, there's a section here. Kind of come in here, we'll zoom in on the whole section. So we'll climb up Barton and we descend down the other side. You're kind of paying attention to the downhill because you got to come back up again. You come down that hill and we basically take a left, and it's some flavor of up. It's not bad there. We take a sharp right-hand turn here, and the road does kick up a little bit. For me, this whole section wasn't that bad on the run, and again, I only did one loop of it. The variety of it was actually kind of nice. None of the hills in here were too long. You come off of this downhill. You run through here, you do this little turn, and you kind of climb this little hill. Once you climb this hill here, you've got like a nice long downhill, little uphill, but not much, some rolling terrain, then a nice downhill back into Barton. So from basically 10-2 to 11-4, so almost a mile and a quarter, is pretty friendly, rolling, not bad terrain. Any other day, you'd be like, this is a great place to run. But then you turn the corner and you have to climb back over Barton again. The point is this: if you run that first loop of hills under control, you will then come across that bridge and you'll be able to run along the flat section again and be in a pretty good place. If you work too hard on that first section of hills, you will pay a really big price, because this is the second lap is where things really start to go south. People will elevate their heart rate too high on these hills. They don't have enough time to recover on the downhills. They end up hitting these flats and they've got a sustained higher heart rate from their mistakes they made across the river. And even though they're running a flat pace, their heart rate is 5, 8, 10 beats higher than they want it to be. And those heartbeats are super costly at the end of your day. Those heartbeats at mile 15, 16, 17, 18, they're not where you want to be. They're not there because you've been steadily working all day. They're there because you made some bad decisions. And those poor decisions on these hills are what's really going to set off your gut and make for problems. Even at this point in time, you're not so happy about eating, but you can still eat a little bit. Run too hard, you lose all ability to eat and process that food. Later on, when you're out here, you're only going to be on liquids anyway, but let's get there through that sort of steady build of effort, that increasing work of perceived exertion, such that we know we can still have a little bit more to go. So remember, by the time you're hitting 10, 11, 12, you're kind of at that, moving from a marathon to a half marathon feel of work. So it's still something you can do for a couple hours. It's work, but it's not terrible. If you're running up those hills and you're really chasing people, tough place to be, right? And in fact, with Chattanooga being the way that it's laid out, you can actually start really hunting people and chasing them down through the halfway point, mile 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. There'll be people slowing down and starting to walk, even on the flats, because of how they exerted themselves on those hills. Now, the second time through, it's a very different conversation. For me, I do a lot of sort of crossing things off my list. I'm never going to climb by that girls' school again. I'm never going to see that mailbox again. I'm never going to go around the golf course again. I'm just checking those things off and just looking for that next mini milestone from my first lap of reconnaissance. There's nothing easy about those last couple miles, whether you're moving, if you're walking a 20-minute mile or you're running a 7-minute mile, those last few miles are really challenging. And this is where that one thing comes out and really helps you kind of force your way through it and to get things done. At this point in time, you're probably drinking Coke, maybe chicken broth. You're really focused on, staying as steady as you can. Hopefully, you haven't had any nutritional disasters, so you're not worried about, being dizzy or being sick. It's more just focusing on what you're doing. And a huge part of that is simply making sure that we're really smart with our effort. Okay. Then you cross the finish line. The finish line in Chattanooga is awesome. You get to hang out, cheer your friends in, see the midnight finish. Woo, everything's awesome. Everything's done. So overall, that's the total presentation. I'm sure I have more slides, but before I go back to the slides, I just want to know if you guys have any questions specific to the bike or the run course that I could answer for you, aside from where special needs is. If you have questions about, I have no idea, turning, winds, momentum, anything else, why don't you go ahead and type those questions in there. Note to self, next time I'll bring a big glass of water so I can drink that as I start talking for 90 minutes. Okay. So Josh said, I've heard it's going to be hot. How does that impact nutrition? Great question. So the good thing about heat, I just said that, yes, is that you know you need to eat and drink, right? You're like, there's no avoiding it. The challenging part about heat is that you can't afford to mess up what you eat and drink, okay? So there's a couple, again, move macro to micro so you know. So when it's going to be a hotter day, your job is to stay as cool as long as you possibly can. That's internally and externally. So from an external standpoint, you want to make sure that you're getting wet with a bottle of water as you exit those aid stations. You don't need to carry it with you, but get wet. Because if your bike clothes are wet as you're moving at speed, it will physically cool you off and help keep you cool, right? As if you're in a little mini rain shower, if you will, right? So that's number one. Number two is that early nutrition matters even more than later. So just like the run we talked about, those first 6 miles, that first hour of bike nutrition, absolutely critical. So I'm 2 bottles an hour myself, 2 bike bottles an hour. I'm a bigger guy and I'm working hard when I'm racing. On a hot day on this bike course here, hold on, or I'd be saying, okay, you know what? Normally I'd say I could click and it would work. I'm coming out of town and I'm drinking in here, and by mile 25 I'll have done 2 bottles. That's great. If it's going to be a hot day, by mile 25 I want 3 bottles down, and I'll in fact I'll kind of come through here and say, where's my visual on this? So if it's mile 8, I need to be done with this bottle, by the time I get on the highway, right? And my second bottle is done, just by the time we hit, what is this? There's like a decent intersection here. I can't remember what this is. I'd actually go click on the map and find it. It's got to be done there. So for me, I speed up that first hour of nutrition. I'm almost kind of burping back up a little bit of fluid. My job is to replace what I lost in the swim so that I'm as good as possible, and I'm good. From there, I can go back to my regular nutrition the rest of the way. You cannot later in the day say, geez, Louise, it really is hot. I need to drink. I haven't had enough. I need to drink a bunch now. Your stomach is not in a place where it can handle it that late in the day. With the effort and a little bit of dehydration, you'll be in shock. So the hotter the race will be, you start earlier on the bike with that nutrition makes a big, big difference, okay? And staying cooler matters later as well. The only other edit I would make for your nutrition plan is that if it is going to be hot, let's say it's going to be in the mid 80s or something like that, or the real feel in the mid 80s or higher, then you may not eat as much later in the day, because consuming fluids is actually more important than eating the bar that you planned on, your Magic Super Wonder Bar, mile 85 or mile 90. You may not be able to really eat it. You can try eating it, and if it's not so great, just stick with the fluids. So don't be afraid to kind of back off of the food stuff, because the fluids are far more important than the food on the bike. We got to keep those fluids going in. I do recommend you have extra salt pills, like external salt pills. Salt Stick brand is what I recommend. So that if you do need to drink excess fluids, or even have to switch to water and not drink a sports drink with electrolytes, you can use some of those salt pills to make that water soluble, so you can actually absorb it through your stomach lining in your body. Similarly speaking, the last couple miles of the bike and the first couple miles of the run become really important about staying cool. That transition, if it is hot, is where you can really accumulate a lot of heat, because you going 20 miles an hour on a bike on an 88-degree day feels like 68 degrees. It's kind of a great day to ride your bike. Sunny, the sun in my eyes, some sweat, but yeah, it's great. But then you get off the bike and start running, which is harder than cycling, but a lot slower. And your body goes from feeling like 68 to hitting 88 while you're sitting in a chair in a tent saying, this doesn't feel so good, to then running too fast at like 95 heat because you're running too hard. Your heart rate skyrockets and will never come down unless you start walking. So that transition really matters. So staying wet on those last 2 aid stations for sure. And then the first couple aid stations of the run, same thing. I'm trying to get my shoes wet, but I'm getting cups of water and I'm pouring it all over myself and doing everything I can to be mindful of those things as well, right? That's super important, okay? That's great. They're calling for 92. Hey, the hotter it is, the more challenging it is, the better it is for you guys. So if it is that hot, ice in the hat, I would wear a hat. I keep my sunglasses on to keep the glare out of my eyes. Ice in my shirt, my jog bra, staying as wet as I can on the run makes a big difference. And again, focusing on those early nutrition pieces. That was an awesome question. All right, any other questions from you guys? We're going for an hour and a half. I should probably wrap up at some point in time, but I don't want to leave you hanging. And of course, I'll send you the email. If you have questions, you can always reach out to us on Facebook as well for those questions. I'll be down there for the race itself doing a 4 Keys talk in person. You can, a shorter version of this without the charts, down on the pavilion there on the steps leading down to the water where the Jumbotron screen will be. So you can come back and ask me questions there, RSVP and meet me there. Jeremiah, no problem. Thank you so much. You know, I really want you to be successful, and being successful in an Ironman is really about being smart. A lot of us just learn by making tons of mistakes for many, many years. And my hope is that you can have this one be like as if you've done 2 or 3 Ironmans, you make smarter decisions the whole way. Sarah, you're welcome as well. Thank you so much. So hopefully I'll see you guys down there. I'll be wearing my red shirt, walking around. I'll be high-fiving people, hanging out. I don't know if I'll be on the hillside or the flat side for the run, but I'll be out there. I look forward to meeting some of you in person and cheering you all across the finish line, and even maybe hanging out with you a little bit around midnight to get the rest of them. Okay? You guys are going to be awesome. We've done a ton of work from now until race day. It's all about writing out that race plan, going through the steps, making sure you get everything you need, being super smart, and just trying not to eat everything as you stop training. All right? Swim, swim, swim. Have fun. You're going to be great out there. I can't wait to see you guys. All right, everyone. Take care. Have a great night. Thanks so much.